You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Something that is a mockery is what is going on with Julian Assange. As we've got news organizations across the globe very concerned about the precedent that this sets. Because quite frankly, as I've pointed out many, many times, and it is absolutely stunning to see the silence of mainstream American media. Wouldn't you think that since this is something that is happening under the Trump administration, that the Washington Post and New York Times, who famously were breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back for the Pentagon Papers. You just had Hollywood, Spielberg's movie with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks and others, The Post, talking about how, you get Daniel Ellsberg stole the papers. So Daniel Ellsberg stood trial for that. He got off because of a procedural miscarriage. But the Washington Post and the New York Times were concerned that the government was going to come after them, even though they had the right under the First Amendment to publish those papers after they were put out by a whistleblower. And yet they don't do anything to defend Julian Assange. And let me tell you something. This is not President Trump coming after him. This is the deep state establishment coming after Julian Assange. Now, it's happening under President Trump, and President Trump should stop it. And so he's going to have responsibility for this because this is happening under his watch. But it's the same people coming after Julian Assange. They came after all of the NSA whistleblowers and others. I've talked about many times how under the Espionage Act, the 1917 Espionage Act, and this is what they're coming after Julian Assange for, which in and of itself is kind of strange, accusing an Australian national of treason against the United States. But nevertheless, the Obama administration prosecuted more journalists and whistleblowers using the 1917 Espionage Act than all the previous presidents over the previous 100 years combined. You had William Binney, Thomas Drake, Weirby, and others who were NSA whistleblowers. The Bush administration didn't come after them. That happened during the Obama administration. And all of this, in terms of Julian Assange, happened during the Obama administration. As a matter of fact, we should probably add Julian Assange to that Mardi Gras float and have Hillary Clinton with her hands around his throat as well, because she really wants to see him taken down. He did not want to see Hillary Clinton. You famously said before the election, he said, "We know Hillary Clinton is a crook, and she will get us involved in many, many wars." He said, "We don't know about President Trump, but we know that about Hillary Clinton." And so here's some information you might be interested in about Hillary Clinton, to which she immediately did a masterful job with her allies in the press to distract us with the traditional red herring of Russia, Russia, Russia now that's become. No. Don't pay any attention to the documents that were released by people who were Bernie Sanders supporters, very upset about how I bought the election with the delegates, how in primary after primary, she would get about the same number of votes, or Bernie Sanders, as Bernie Sanders. Sometimes he would get more votes and she would get more delegates. And we reported that over and over again. And they were pretty angry about that by the time they got to the convention. So it was internal releasing of that, as we have had Benny prove, as we've had WikiLeaks testify. But now they want to come after Julian Assange. And this is the embedded military-industrial complex, the deep state, that stays behind, regardless of who is president. And as a Swedish journalist who worked with WikiLeaks said, if Julian Assange, being a publisher, is put in prison for being a publisher, no other reason than being a publisher, then we have no rules. And I would think that the Washington Post and New York Times would be defending Julian Assange, but they're not, which just tells you how deeply embedded they are as part of the military-industrial complex establishment. Forget about the fact that they did the Pentagon Papers. That was decades ago. Hollywood can do movies to pretend that they still are on the side of truth and transparency in government, but that's nothing could be further from the truth. And we've had Ray McGovern write an op-ed piece talking about how a major German TV network ran 2 primetime segments last Wednesday night exposing authorities in Sweden for having made up the story about Julian Assange being a rapist in the first place. That was the fiction under which they were to get him arrested. That was the fiction under which he's been tortured now all this time. He was holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy for a long time because he escaped bail for the extradition charges that were based on a false rape charge. As Ray McGovern points out, until last night, he wrote this last Thursday, most Germans, as well as other consumers of quote-unquote major media in Europe, had no idea of the trickery that had enmeshed Assange in a spiderweb almost certainly designed by the U.S., woven by accomplices in vassal states like Sweden, Britain, and eventually Ecuador. Yes, these are the same people who have now put together 2 fictional narratives to try to throw President Trump out of office. And were successful in getting him impeached in one of those. Same people. This is how they operate. They trade in lies. That's their stock and trade. As Mike Pompeo said at West Point, we were told we don't lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. I went to the CIA, and we lie, we cheat, we steal. We have classes on how to do that. Yeah, we've noticed. We have noticed. I want to talk about another problem, and that is basically what is happening to the free press, what is happening to transparency in government. And we are essentially going to have the free press made illegal if Julian Assange is extradited and jailed in the United States. But, of course, that may not be necessary because, as we heard yesterday in the extradition hearing, we were told that U.S. spies actually plotted to kill Julian Assange and make it look like an accident. Not a surprise at all, is it? We also learned that after the first day of the extradition hearing yesterday, he was handcuffed 11 times, stripped naked twice, had the case files that he had been given to read confiscated, and then was put in 5 different cells. That's not torture or harassment, is it? You should be very concerned when your government does this type of thing. People in the UK, people in America, because it's America that is engendering this for the UK government, and they are the willing handmaids of this. And understand, these people are joined at the hip. All these different, the 5 eyes, the 5 English-speaking countries, especially the U.S. and Britain. But then you've also got Australia, New Zealand, and they're all working together. Canada, they're all working together as part of this shared intelligence. And it's not going to stop there. There are now global plans for the EU and the U.S. to begin transatlantic facial recognition database. Now, they probably already are scraping the information off of Facebook, but just understand that the surveillance state and the biometric surveillance and the social media credits, those are all being used to consolidate a global government. That's what this is really about. We need to have information, and that means that we need to have fearless people who are going to give us that information. And that's exactly what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks have done for a long time, and they're being punished for it. And we need to speak out about this. Again, that kind of treatment is absolutely insane. We had Ray McGovern talking about the fact that in Germany, people there were pretty much just getting what was fed to them by the mainstream media in Europe. And one of the individuals who is the UN rapporteur on torture said he had consumed so much mainstream media that he didn't even want to go near the Julian Assange case initially. He believed that he was a rapist. He believed that it was tried, that they had tried and found out that he was a rapist. That's why they charged him with that. But he subsequently found out that it was all made up. He said he'd previously admitted to being so misled by the media portrayals of Assange that he was initially reluctant to investigate the case. But then last year he wrote an op-ed piece last June. And again, no major media outlet would post it. We talked about it at the time, but here's what he had to say as a recap. He said, but surely I found myself pleading Assange must be a selfish narcissist, skateboarding through the Ecuadorian embassy, smearing feces on the wall. Well, all I heard from embassy staff is that the inevitable inconveniences of his accommodation at their offices were handled with mutual respect and consideration. But this changed after the election of President Moreno, when they were suddenly instructed to find smears against Assange. And quite literally, they did literal smears, pretending that he had smeared feces on the wall. And when they didn't find any smears, they would be replaced. Get the message? Yeah, you're going to come up with some stuff or invent some stuff, or you're going to be out of a job. In the end, he said, it finally dawned on me that I'd been blinded by propaganda, that Assange had been systematically slandered to divert attention from the crimes that he exposed. And he ended the op-ed with this warning. For once, telling the truth has become a crime, while the powerful enjoy impunity. It will be too late to correct the course. We will have surrendered our voice to censorship and our fate to unrestrained tyranny. Let me tell you, we're a long ways down that road when we look at what has happened with social media. And we look at the corruption that is going on there. Not only do you have U.S. spies conspiring to kill him and make it look like an accident. That's what the CIA always does. They have manuals on that, as Pompeo would say. And we have seen the manuals. They got declassified back in the 1960s. The easiest thing to do. Preferred method of disposing of somebody is pushing them off, about a 30-foot high incline, because that's high enough to kill them. And anybody can fall. Anybody can slip and fall. They don't have to have been pushed, right? But they have a lot of different ways that they can come after you. They can make it look like you're accidentally killed, or they can keep stripping you and harassing you, keeping you from sleeping, moving you to multiple cells so that after a while you get sick and die. And we have seen the physical condition of Julian Assange as well as the corruption, as Britain has, I pointed out briefly yesterday, a Supreme Court scandal. New damning emails show UK corruption in the case against Julian Assange. And this shows conversations going back and forth between UK authorities, making sure that they got the right judge, like they did with Roger Stone. Got the right judge and made sure that they were going to, they accelerated his Swedish case. They deliberately created a backlog of other cases whose outcome depended on this matter being resolved negatively. And so they manipulated the timing and the order of his case to dispense with him while it adjourned other cases, so he would not be afforded protections under the revision. So that's a email trail that has come out, very detailed in that. He is trying to get France to offer him asylum as part of this extradition hearing, but we'll have to see whether or not he survives that.
Keith Bansimer powers the great line of high-quality storable food we have available at Ready Hour at InfoWarsStore.com. And yes, we're selling storable food here. What concerns me is we're a month into this, and food sales aren't going down, they're going up. You've never seen anything like this.
Never like this, and sustained. It started, 27 days ago, and it kind of went hyper, and it doesn't fall off. And in even recent days, it's further increasing. The semis are rolling, the chips are in, we're producing as much as quickly as possible. Orders that are getting in today, they're going to ship. They're going to just ship in 10 to 14 days. We're helping people prepare.
It's just something you cover.
Absolutely. You like to eat daily, and so we're just backing that up. It's the best insurance out there. You can get food today that you can eat 10 years from now at today's prices.
It's normal to sit on top storable food and guns. All our forebears did it. We've got food, we've got guns, we've got Jesus. We know how to use it.
We've got a phrase around here, Alex. It's real simple. Noah prepared.